I always imagined the moment my baby arrived would be the most beautiful, overwhelming experience of my life. People talk about it as if it's some kind of sacred explosion of love, something that hits you so intensely that it rewires your soul. I spent months waiting for that moment, imagining the warmth that would spread across my chest, the tears I would shed, the electricity that would rush through me when our eyes met for the first time. But when the nurse placed him on my chest inside that bright, sterile delivery room, none of that happened. Instead, I felt a strange, heavy silence inside my body. Not a peaceful silence, more like an emotional emptiness I didn't recognize. The room was loud. Machines beeped. Nurses moved around with hurried purpose. My husband cried and kept whispering, "You did it! You did it!" But I felt disconnected, as if I was watching a scene happening to someone else. I tried to search inside myself for the feeling everyone describes, that pull, that rush, that overwhelming sense of belonging, but there was nothing there. Just a numbness that scared me the moment I felt it. I forced a smile because that was what was expected of me. People were waiting to see that glow, that love, that instant bond. And in fear of disappointing them, I played the part. I held my baby close, pretending to feel something meaningful, while inside, I felt like a fraud. I remember looking at him, tiny, fragile, innocent, and wondering why my heart wasn't responding, why I couldn't feel what mothers were supposed to feel. As the hours passed, the guilt started creeping in. I thought maybe I was still in shock. Maybe it would hit me later. Maybe something was blocking the emotion. I rationalized everything, trying to convince myself there was a perfectly normal explanation. But deep inside, a small voice whispered something I refused to hear. What if this feeling never comes? I buried that thought quickly, terrified of giving it power. I told myself tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow I would feel like a mother. Tomorrow I would be who everyone believed I already was. But even in that moment, holding my newborn, I could feel the fear settling into my bones. Fear that something inside me was broken in a way I couldn't fix. The first night was the moment reality began to settle like dust over everything. After visitors left and the hospital hallway lights dimmed, the quiet became overwhelming. I sat alone in the dimly lit room, listening to my baby's tiny breaths, watching the shadows move slowly across the walls. I kept waiting for the feeling to arrive, for the connection to suddenly spark inside my chest. But the longer I waited, the heavier my body felt with dread. Every time a nurse walked in and asked how I was feeling, I put on a performance. I straightened my posture, lifted my voice in a cheerful tone, and pretended everything was just as it should be. But when she left, I would sink back into myself, feeling like a hollow version of the mother I wanted to be. I stared at my baby, searching for something: affection, tenderness, even fear, but the numbness persisted. That numbness scared me more than anything I'd ever felt in my life. It was as though I was locked behind a thick fog inside my own mind, unable to reach the part of myself that was supposed to love him. When he cried, I responded because I knew I had to, because not responding felt unimaginable. But as I rocked him, I felt mechanical, like my body was doing the right thing, while my heart stood still. As night slowly stretched into early morning, tears began to well in my eyes. Not from exhaustion, though I was exhausted beyond words, but from the terror blooming inside me. Why don't I feel anything? I whispered into the darkness. What is wrong with me? Saying it out loud made it feel even more real, and I quickly wiped my tears as if someone might walk in and catch me failing at motherhood. The next morning, the world expected me to be glowing and grateful, and I continued playing my part. But inside, the fear grew larger. Every smile felt like a lie. Every compliment about how natural I looked felt like a cruel joke. And behind all of it, There was a growing dread that maybe I wasn't capable of love the way mothers were supposed to be. When we finally went home, I thought the familiar environment might change something inside me. I imagined that walking through my own front door with the baby in my arms would unlock the connection I had been missing. But as soon as I stepped inside, surrounded by family celebrating, the mask slipped onto my face automatically. Everyone wanted to hold him, kiss him, bless him. They said things like, "You must be so in love," and I nodded, pretending I knew what that felt like. Throughout that first week, I became an expert in hiding the truth. I smiled in pictures, wrote sweet captions, sent heart emojis to everyone who congratulated us. I played the role so convincingly that even I almost believed myself. Almost. But every night, when the house went silent and I was alone with him, the truth returned like a shadow settling over my chest. I felt disconnected not just from my baby, but from life itself. Everything felt distant, like I was watching myself from somewhere outside my own body. Even the moments that were supposed to be meaningful, his first bath, the first time he wrapped his hand around my finger, felt muted, muffled by the fog inside me. People kept telling me I was doing great, which only made the guilt heavier. I knew I was functioning. I was feeding him, changing him, keeping him safe. But inside, I felt like an empty shell going through the motions of motherhood. And the more I pretended, the more isolated I felt. Comparing myself to other mothers became a daily torture. Every time I saw a picture of a glowing mom saying I've never loved anything so much, it felt like a reminder of my failure. I wondered if there was something uniquely wrong with me, something broken in my heart that couldn't be fixed. I tried everything to spark something, holding him longer, singing to him, talking to him, even forcing myself to imagine tender scenarios. But nothing changed. And with every failed attempt, the fear grew stronger. Fear that maybe this was permanent. Fear that maybe I was incapable of bonding. Fear that my baby deserved someone better than me. Every night, when I sat alone in the quiet, the same thought whispered in my mind, what if this feeling never comes? It was during the second week that everything began to crack. I had been surviving on minimal sleep, forced smiles, and increasing self-judgment. My body felt heavy, my mind felt distant, and my heart felt trapped behind something I couldn't identify. I tried to hide it from everyone, especially my husband. I didn't want him to see me as a failure, or worse, as a mother who didn't love her child. So I carried the secret alone. But secrets, especially heavy ones, eventually explode. One night, after hours of my baby crying inconsolably, something inside me broke open. I paced the room, bouncing him gently, whispering soothing words I didn't feel. The house was dark except for the dim nightlight casting soft shadows on the walls. My heartbeat felt uneven, my breath shallow, and my thoughts spiraled into a place I never imagined I'd reach. I sat on the floor, holding him close even though my arms trembled from exhaustion, and I whispered, barely audible, "I don't feel anything. I don't feel anything. What's wrong with me?" Saying it out loud felt like opening a door I had been terrified to touch. Tears poured down my face in hot, endless streams. My hands shook. My chest felt like it was collapsing. I felt like I was disappearing. My husband walked in at that exact moment. He froze when he saw me on the floor, hair messy, face wet with tears, shoulders shaking. He didn't say anything at first. He just knelt beside me, his voice soft, almost breaking. "Talk to me, please." Something inside me gave up resisting. I told him everything. The numbness, the fear, the shame, the feeling that I wasn't enough for our baby, the dread that something was broken inside me. I told him I was terrified he would see me differently, that he would think I was a terrible mother. But instead of judgment, instead of anger, he took my hands gently and said, "You're not a monster. You're overwhelmed. You're exhausted. And you're human. We will get through this together." For the first time since giving birth, I didn't feel alone. It didn't fix everything, not instantly, but it opened a door, a small, fragile door toward healing. After that night, something inside me shifted, not magically, not dramatically, but slowly, gently, like the first light of morning creeping into a dark room. My husband's words stayed with me, echoing softly whenever I felt myself spiraling. You're not a monster. You're human. I didn't immediately feel the love I'd been waiting for, but I felt something else. Permission to stop pretending, permission to be honest, permission to breathe again. The following days were still hard. The numbness didn't disappear overnight, but I stopped forcing myself to feel something specific, and strangely, that made space for new feelings to grow. I allowed myself to simply be with my baby instead of pressuring myself to love him the right way. I watched him sleep without expecting magic. I held him without expecting fireworks. I let the moments unfold quietly. One afternoon, as he slept against my chest, something changed. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't sudden. It was a soft warmth spreading through me as I felt his tiny breaths against my skin. I noticed how his fingers curled around my shirt, how his cheek rested peacefully on my chest, how he trusted me completely without needing me to be perfect. For the first time, I felt a small crack in the numbness, a tiny spark, gentle but real. It wasn't the overwhelming bond I had imagined motherhood would bring, but it was something I hadn't felt before. And that something was enough to give me hope. Over the next days, that spark grew in quiet ways. I found myself watching him with curiosity instead of fear. I started noticing the little things, the way he stretched when he woke up, the small noises he made before crying, the way his eyes slowly learned to focus on my face. I realized I didn't need to feel a Hollywood-style explosion of love to be a good mother. I just needed to show up, imperfect, tired, scared, and let the connection build in its own time. Every mother's journey is different. And mine, though messy and full of doubts, was slowly becoming meaningful. I began to understand something no one had told me. Sometimes love doesn't hit you all at once. Sometimes it grows, quietly, patiently, beautifully, in the moments when you stop expecting it and simply allow it to be. Looking back now, I see how much pressure I put on myself to feel something specific, to meet an impossible standard of instant motherhood that society paints as universal. I wasn't prepared for the truth that not every mother connects immediately, and that love can take time, just like healing, trust, and identity rebuild. I wish someone had told me that from the beginning. I wish someone had looked into my overwhelmed eyes, placed a hand on my shoulder, and whispered, "It's okay if you don't feel it yet." No one talks about the mothers who struggle silently. No one talks about the numbness, the fear, the haunting guilt. We hear stories about love at first sight, about hearts overflowing instantly, but we rarely hear about the mothers who sit in the dark wondering why their hearts are quiet. The shame of not feeling the way you're supposed to is suffocating, and I know now that so many mothers experience it, but stay silent out of fear of judgment. I spent weeks believing something was wrong with me. I labeled myself as broken, defective, unfit. But the truth is, nothing was wrong with me. My brain, my hormones, my emotions, my exhaustion, all of it created a storm that made it hard to feel. And that didn't make me less of a mother. It made me a human being going through one of the most overwhelming transitions of her life. When the bond finally came, it didn't come as a wave crashing into me. It came in small, almost invisible moments. A warmth during a feeding, a softness when he smiled in his sleep, a calmness when I held him close. Those moments built a connection stronger than anything I could have imagined. A connection rooted not in perfection, but in persistence, presence, and vulnerability. If you're listening to this and you feel numb, afraid, or ashamed, please hear me. You are not failing. You are not heartless. You are not alone. Your bond may grow slowly. It may grow quietly. It may grow differently than you expected, but it will grow. And when it does, you will understand that motherhood isn't defined by the moment your baby is born. It's defined by every moment after, by showing up, by trying, by caring even when you feel lost. You are enough, more than enough. And your love, no matter how slowly it arrives, is still real, still powerful, and still yours. Comment, I understand, if you've ever felt something similar. Your story could be the comfort someone else needs.